Get your elbows up, boys. Canada's back. Mark Carney's going to make Canada great again and pull the military up by its bootstraps. Hooah! Chief of Defense Staff and weepy DEI General Jenny Kerrigan signed a directive to increase the size of Canada's reserve forces from 25,500 to 400,000. For those rubbing their eyes at that number, that's a 16-fold increase. Cue the laugh track. Canada's already paltry reserve force has thus far failed to ever hit its personnel target of 30,000 every single year since it was set in 2017, when it was 26,500. Even if the Canadian Armed Forces were fully funded and furnished with adequate equipment and resources, it's just not going to happen, at least not without conscription. The thing is, the federal government and the senior military leadership appointed by it openly loathe the very things that have traditionally fueled voluntary military recruitment. The new military prioritizes DEI in its recruitment and promotion. This is a problem for a profession that, by its very nature, is attractive to nationalistic, young, white men. On aggregate, they tend to like guns, struggle, comradeship, and feeling a part of something meaningful. When they join a nation's armed forces, they feel pride in the uniform. Other demographics are great and welcome, but the main source of recruits has been made to feel decidedly unwelcome. The planned, wildly unrealistic sextupling of the reserve force got me to thinking, just how top-heavy is our new DEI Army, Navy, and Air Force? Too many chiefs and not enough Indians doesn't quite do justice to how upside down our military's become. We've got 145 flag officers. That is officers with the rank of general or admiral, including commodores, which are the Navy's equivalent to an Army or Air Force brigadier general. Of this, an estimated 27 are in the Navy, 27 in the Air Force, and 77 in the Army. Another 15 are in joint commands across the branches or organizations like NORAD. So, how many Indians are our chiefs leading? Lock and load. This is going to be good. As of January 2025, the Royal Canadian Army had just 82 Leopard 2 main battle tanks in its armored forces. But due to maintenance issues, only 41 were combat ready. That means that for every combat-ready main battle tank, Canada has nearly 2 generals. Crazy, you say? Maybe. But it could make for a rather direct command structure. If Canada were to ever mount a defense against an invasion from, say, Vatican City, we could have one general pilot the tank and another general man the gun. With our top brass so close to the action, their orders would be immediately followed without any hesitation. The Royal Canadian Air Force is in slightly better shape. On paper, we have 88 CF-18 Hornet fighter jets, mostly built in 1980. Of that, only 30 to 35 are combat ready, but let's be generous and round up to the high end of that figure. That means that our Air Force would almost have one general piloting every single fighter jet in operation. If you're not going to have a big Air Force, then you better put your best man where it counts, eh? And the vaunted Royal Canadian Navy? The floating force that ended the Second World War as the third largest navy on the planet? Well, it's got 6 to 8 combat-ready warships, mostly Halifax-class frigates. Again, let's round up to 8 to be generous in this exercise. With 27 flag officers, that means that we have more than 3 admirals for every single combat-ready warship in the Royal Canadian Navy. With the deck so crowded, they might need to bunk up. But perhaps I'm being unfair. In April, the Royal Canadian Navy posted on X that the HMCS Corner Brook was upgraded and ready for operations. They said, and I quote, "Freshly upgraded, it's now the most advanced submarine in the Canadian fleet." Correction. The HMCS Corner Brook is the only submarine in the Canadian fleet. One diesel submarine built in the 1980s to patrol the largest coastline of any country on the planet. But we can rest assured that the Corner Brook will be well commanded with 3 admirals aboard. If we combined every single one of the 145 generals and admirals in the Canadian Armed Forces and gave each of them a fighter jet, tank, or warship, they would outnumber their equipment by nearly 2 to 1. Canada has nearly 2 generals or admirals for every operational fighter jet, tank, and warship in operation. Canada's armed forces have been in decline for a very, very long time, with a moderate resurgence during the first half of the Harper government. That blip wasn't enough to reverse the damage of decades of neglect. And since then, the imposition of radical, progressivist ideology into the command structure has destroyed its meritocracy and martial culture. I grew up in military towns and dreamed for most of my boyhood of joining the Navy's ranks. If I had done so, perhaps I'd be an admiral by now and get to command the engine room of the HMCS Corner Brook. Thank God I didn't. And based on the truly wretched state of our forces, it's doubtful that we'll be meeting our 400,000 man recruitment target anytime soon.